Thank you very much, Dr. Kaisaraja. Truly insightful, interesting, and absolutely intriguing, must I say. A lot of questions have come on Live 52. They're asking, is Live 52 a good tonic or a good tablet for the liver?
I can say that Live 52 is a very popular tonic for liver disease. You must understand that till now we did not have specific treatment for, let's say, alcoholic liver disease or for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So what to give to the patient? If you give him a vitamin, the patient will say, I went to the doctor, I paid consultation, he told me just to stop alcohol. I will stop alcohol, but how will I get better? So, not everyone will understand. You need to psychologically satisfy the patient. So we'll end up giving some form of liver protective. And Live 52 is one of those very famous liver protectives. There has never been any very well conducted clinical study with Live 52. I would equate Live 52 with one of the thousands of remedies for coronavirus which are getting popular. None of them have undergone a strict clinical trial. So the only thing we can say about Live 52 is that it's been there since like 30, maybe longer years. And despite that, no one has done a good, well-conducted clinical trial.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raja. The next question that I would like to ask you is there an annual checkup for checking your livers, the condition of the liver and how good your liver is?
Annual checkups for any disease were not very prevalent till very recently. It is becoming more popular. It might have started as a kind of some sort of a commercial stunt to it. But having said that, even in countries where there is public healthcare, so there's no commercial bias to do a health checkup, people have realized that certain forms of health checks done on an annual basis or at a periodic basis, we could say, in a better terminology, are useful. For example, one of them is cancer screening. Certain cancers need a specific form of screening at a periodic interval, which could be several years or maybe a year for some of them. For liver disease, there is no such guideline as such that you must have an annual check for your liver disease. But let us say you have fatty liver, the non-alcoholic variety, the one which is connected to obesity and diabetes. You are a known case. We have given you basic advice: control your diabetes, control your obesity, modify your diet, exercise, weight loss. These type of people should have an annual review with the liver doctor to see what's going on. Okay, whether the diabetes has produced additional damage on the liver. They may not have had cholesterol problems at the beginning of their problem, but if they do annual checks, they might pick up a cholesterol problem. They might pick up a heart problem. So for example, all these patients, I told you a list of conditions which go hand in hand together: diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, cholesterol, fatty liver, and heart disease. So when you come to us with these annual checks, you have one of these problems, you're 45 years, we recommend you have a heart test, like a stress test. So this is the advantage. If you see a doctor every year, a good doctor, they can recommend to you what you can do as a preventive measure. So if you don't overdo these things, then these are very good. If you are told to do a cardiac stress test every year, well, that's overdue. You don't need a heart cardiac stress test every year. Once in 5 years is fine. But a cholesterol check every year is good. Okay?
True. Doctor, in fact, there is another one that has come around, the fatty liver question. Is the fatty liver a curable condition? And what type of foods should one have to avoid a fatty liver? Also, in case of a reversal, what are the foods you recommend?
Yeah. So first of all, let's not talk about curability of condition. There's no disease which is really curable. Okay. Most diseases are well controllable. So diabetes can be well controlled. Hypertension can be well controlled. So fatty liver and its progression can be well controlled. You can remove the fat from the liver. If you have 20% fat in the liver, we have medications which can make the fat disappear from your liver. You can do that without medicines also. If you start exercising, lose your excess weight, control your diet, lose weight, you can reduce all the fat from your liver. It depends upon what stage of liver disease we have detected you. I told you liver disease goes from normal to fatty liver to fibrosis to cirrhosis. Again, the softness of the liver: soft, little firm, more firm, hard, very hard. Those scores I told you on that chart. So if you have not progressed too far, you can actually be reversed back. So you need to address what all is there: diabetes, blood pressure, cholesterol, address the body weight, and see if your liver disease needs medications. So if you've got early liver disease, maybe we'll not give you medication. We'll advise you to modify your risk factors. If you got little advanced liver disease, we have medications. We have good medications which can reverse the fatty liver. And there are many more which you will see in the next 2 to 3 years. The maximum research in liver disease is on fatty liver disease now. Coming to diet, this is standard diet which works to reduce weight, to reduce diabetes for heart patients and fatty liver disease. Again, these diseases go together. So we should have had a talk today on metabolic diseases rather than fatty liver disease. These all go together. So the diet is same. It's usually a low carb diet. I'm sure all of you have heard about low carb diet. So less carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the ones which go into your liver, raise the sugar levels. The extra sugar creates a mess, makes insulin secretion. The extra sugar gets converted into fat. Your cholesterol goes up, gets deposited in the liver. You get fatty liver. So the high carb diet is what you have to prevent. Next is fat, not too much fat. But it's not the other way around, reduce fat. That used to be the answer earlier on. Now it is reduce carbohydrates. Okay. And then moderate fat and high protein. So protein can be normal. So this is the diet. And if you want an example of a regional cuisine, which is good, then you talk about Mediterranean diet. So Mediterranean diet is kind of the best diet close to ideal for human beings, which is low carbohydrate, medium fat, and high protein.
Dr. Raja, now because you're on food, I would like to ask you this question. What is the impact of vegetarian and non-vegetarian food on the performance of a liver and over an entire lifetime? Which is more conducive to have for liver? Is it non-vegetarian or vegetarian?
There is no trial to say that vegetarian food would be good for the liver and non-vegetarian food will be bad for the liver. So we cannot say it on the basis of clinical data. Vegetarian food is in generally good because you would not be eating so much fats. You know, vegetarian food is less fatty in general. Okay, because animal meat has got fat, which is part of the meat. Okay, especially if you take red meat. So it's again coming to that, but then you must understand one thing. Vegetarian diet is in general less in protein and animal diet is high in protein. So if you ask purely on scientific basis, there is nothing to say that vegetarian food is better for the liver than non-vegetarian food. It's about the carbohydrate, and carbohydrate has nothing to do with veg and non-veg. Fat is, I can agree, if you eat lots of non-veg, you're eating lots of fat. Okay. So a lot depends upon your other features. If you are a thin person, if you exercise every day, if you've got a healthy lifestyle, if you're non-diabetic and you eat loads and loads of meat, you're a pure non-veg, only meat. Maybe your liver is one of the best livers. On the other hand, I have vegetarian people who eat lots of sweets. They are diabetic, they are fat, they were non-veg, they left non-veg because of whatever concern. They still have significant liver disease. So it's about many other things other than just vegetarian versus non-vegetarian.
Dr. Raja, is there any herbal preparation for liver disorders? And also someone has asked me, there is milk thistle and extract that you find, is it good for the liver? And last but not the least, somebody also asked me, if they have apple cider every day, is it good or bad for the liver?
Okay. I think we've answered all those questions. These are all products which have been promoted, you know, with limited scientific evidence. So I'm not saying that milk thistle, which contains silymarin, is not good for the liver. There have been small clinical trials which say that silymarin worked for liver diseases. The problem is that when these trials are presented to a proper medical scientific community, it depends upon how the trial was designed. Now you take 100 people, 100 of them, you give them milk thistle with fatty liver, the other 100 give them, let's say, chalk powder and not milk thistle, and see the result after 1 year. You will see that the milk thistle group has become better in terms of fatty liver and the chalk powder group has not got better. But there are many confounding variables. There might have been more diabetics in your chalk powder group. That's why they didn't improve, because they had diabetes. The chalk powder group might be more overweight, which is the placebo group, what we call, you know, which we're giving something which looks similar to the medication, placebo. So we have to balance for all the confounding variables. The trial has to be blinded. So a person should not know he's taking milk thistle. So when you do a pure trial like that, now we come to good clinical trials of milk thistle. The good clinical trials of milk thistle, there are trials in alcoholic liver disease, there are trials in fatty liver disease, there are trials in hepatitis C. The good clinical trials done in Europe, done in Japan, have not shown any significant benefit of milk thistle. Same holds true for apple cider. And same holds true for other herbal products also, that none of them have stood the test of a good clinical trial. You know, and it's not that I'm an allopathic doctor, so I'm not promoting the non-allopathic medications. Even some of our own drugs, we have a drug called ursodeoxycholic acid. It's a very popular drug for liver disease. It's a proper medical drug. Lot of our liver doctors give to you when you have fatty liver. But even that drug, which was popular 10 years ago, has now been shown it does not work for liver diseases. We still give it to you, just to show you that we are giving you something. So I'm telling
Doctor,
you the truth.
sorry.
None of these things work. Sorry, please go ahead.
In fact, there is a question that's come up here. Is there a connection between triglycerides and your liver condition?
Yes, definitely. So people who have high triglycerides fall into that metabolic syndrome group: diabetes, obesity, high triglycerides, even high uric acid, heart disease, blood pressure, sedentary lifestyle, and liver disease. So it's all connected. On the other hand, remember that when you are an alcoholic, the alcohol can also raise the triglycerides up. That is the alcohol-induced triglyceride elevation. So that is a specific disease. Triglycerides can go really up in alcohol-induced problems, but you can have triglyceride elevation as part of that metabolic syndrome, which encompasses all these diseases. So again, it's important when you have, let's say, you have fatty liver disease, you have a little bit of diabetes, a little bit of triglyceride, a little bit of obesity, to target each one of these things. And in that business, we need to control your triglycerides, bring them below 150. And there, the simplest drug what we give you is actually omega-3 fatty acid, which is fish oil. So fish oil helps in, because those triglyceride levels are not very high. I cannot give you fish oils for alcohol-induced triglycerides, that those levels are very high. We need some other medication there. Actually, you need to stop alcohol and then you take the medication if needed. So that's
Doctor,
the point.
Staying on that alcohol bit, there's a question that's come in asking, is there a connection between tobacco and liver conditions?
Again, tobacco will not directly cause a liver condition. Tobacco mostly causes lung conditions, throat conditions. But one thing is sure, and there are some studies, if you have an advanced liver disease, let's say you are cirrhosis liver because of alcoholic liver disease or hepatitis C, you have end-stage liver disease, and you are a smoker also, then you will be in a far more bad situation with regard to your liver. So smoking has additive effects on advanced liver disease. This holds true for pancreatic problems also. Pancreas is also connected to alcohol, and smoking has nothing to do with pancreas. But if you've got an advanced pancreatic disease and you're a smoker, you will have far more problems. So smoking is indirectly connected only when you have advanced liver or advanced pancreatic disease.
If I may ask you another question, Dr. Raja, is SGPT and SGOT testing a good indicator of the liver condition? And is there any alternative to blood tests?
Yeah, my compliments to the person who has asked this question. Very good question, because this is something which all of you will get it done if you decide to get a liver check, and you will always see an SGOT, SGPT value, which is slightly elevated. And then every time you do your liver function test, you will be worried about what those values are. You would want to try to bring them down to normal. So SGOT and SGPT are markers which tell you that liver is undergoing inflammation. So let's say you've got fatty liver and normal SGOT, SGPT, your liver condition is good. If you've got fatty liver, SGOT, SGPT are high, that means you might be having some inflammation going on. This is a very simplistic explanation I'm giving you. If you come to a real clinical setting, then SGOT, SGPT can be either way. So let's say you are a very overweight person, you are diabetic and you drink alcohol, you might have SGOT, SGPT normal. That doesn't mean you don't have liver disease. Okay, so it's an overall risk factor. SGOT, SGPT is just a marker. So don't put all your money on SGOT, SGPT. So don't go every 3 months, do your SGOT, SGPT, OTPT normal, come back and drink alcohol. It doesn't work that way. It's just a marker, that something is happening. Having said that, you follow your SGOT, SGPT. Let's say there is one individual who does his SGOT, SGPT every day for 30 days. He will find a big variation. SGOT, SGPTs can be absolutely normal. They can be 2 times elevated in that person over 30 days. So it depends upon when you tested it. So it's a very raw marker of disease, and you should not put all your ideas only on monitoring SGOT, SGPT. But because it's such a simple test, it is the most common test of liver function done. That's why it's so well known, and we still have to do it.
Dr. Raja, if I may ask you, a lot of questions around exercising and yoga. Is there any exercise or any form of yoga which will help the liver to get a little stronger and to remain healthy all through? Over to you.
Yeah. So again, yoga is a complete lifestyle thing. It's not just about just doing that yoga exercise. It's a way of life, yoga. So definitely, if you follow yoga rigorously, then you have actually made many more changes to your lifestyle. You know, if you are overweight and you're doing yoga, you'll eventually lose weight. So you'll have benefits of that. You'll modify your diet also as part of that. Alone, if you ask me, is there any particular yoga related exercise will affect the liver? There's nothing proven on that one. On the other hand, what has been proven is that if you can lose 5 to 7% of your body weight, it improves your liver. Okay, so we have data on weight loss, how much weight loss benefits fatty liver. We have data on carbohydrate reduction and fatty liver. We don't have clinical data on yoga, exercise, and liver disease, but I'm sure it's not there because no one has studied it. It's a very good thing probably to study and see the benefits of yoga alone on liver disease, because it definitely has beneficial effects on diabetes, weight loss, heart disease, high blood pressure. So yoga is targeting all those things which cause liver disease. So it might actually have benefits on it. Liver disease is a slow disease. So if you do yoga for a year, you may not find any difference. So these studies are difficult to do. You need to look at people who do yoga over like 5 years, 10 years and see the difference. So it's actually difficult to do such studies which would extend for several years. Yeah.
Is there any advice you would like to give our parents and children who are watching this program as to how they should deal with their lifestyle going forward so that they do not come up to a condition of what you explained a little earlier?
Yeah. I think one single message, not just for liver disease, but overall health. It may be liver health, diabetes, heart disease, joint problems, your own body image, cancers as you grow up, both for children as well as for adults, is maintaining weight. We as a society, as a human population in the world, our average weight has gone up. It's just like the sea levels are going up because of the glaciers melting, one indicator, or the ozone layer, one indicator. Body weight is also an indicator of, let's say, what is happening to the human society. So as a society and as individuals, we must all try to maintain our body weight, which will automatically bring in the principle of healthy eating, regular exercise, and stuff like that.
There is somebody who's asked me, does fasting, or say once a week or twice a week, help in having the liver become a little stronger and stay healthy?
Again, being very scientific, nobody has ever done that study that fasting will help your liver improve. These are difficult studies to do, but indirectly we know that, and it's a very popular concept, and I do it myself as well. Extended fasting. If you can remain fasting for 14 to 16 hours and eat only in the other 8 hours, you can drink water in these 14 hours and some very low calorie stuff like lemon juice or some very low calorie stuff. But the majority of your intake, 90% of calories, should be in 8 hours. This is called extended fasting. This helps you actually shift your metabolic system in such a manner that abnormal carbohydrate metabolism, which was there in your body, which was driving everything, which was driving the diabetes, driving the weight gain, driving the fatty liver, it was disturbed. This extended fasting resets that. But again, one more thing to remember here, it's not about just doing that 1 or 2 odd day fasting. This has to be done on a consistent level. So if you wish to do this type of thing, then you must make your daily routine in such a manner that you don't eat for 14 to 16 hours any major meal, and in the remaining 8 to 9 hours you eat 90% of your calories. So roughly this way. So you can overall improve your metabolic system with that one. I'm sure it will indirectly benefit the liver, but we don't have pure data to say that it does.
Very insightful, intriguing, and interesting, Doctor. Last final 10 seconds, if you can just give our audience a message on this entire subject. Just one last leaving message that you would like to leave them with.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to asking yourself a question, can I have liver disease? I don't have any symptom. You must assess your risk factors. And the risk factors commonly are alcohol. So how much alcohol do you drink? So if you are drinking alcohol, then the limits which I've suggested to you, you must get your liver checked. And if you continue to drink alcohol, then probably that annual liver check is a good idea. When it comes to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, again, it will not produce any symptoms. See if you have risk factors, overweight, abdominal obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol. If you have any one of these or at least two of these, and especially if you're above the age of 40, 45, because liver disease, progresses with advanced age, you must get checked. And when you do go for a check, make sure you've checked hepatitis B and C at least once, wherever you may belong to. You may belong to a high risk area, low risk area in the world, but it's a good idea to check at least once for hepatitis B and C.
Loved your talk so much, and your message was clear and concise. Have a healthy lifestyle, exercise regularly, don't believe on things that people tell you, just take care of yourself. Thank you very much, Dr. Raja, once again.
Thank you, Dr. Kaiser, for that insightful session, and thank you, Hari, for having ably assisted to conduct it. We thank you for having attended this session. Always remember, Six Ox Minds is here to serve, share experiences, learn, and reach beyond. We look forward to having you next week too. On that note, wishing you all a great evening ahead from all of us here at Six Ox Minds.